Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Anthony Moreno. The New Mexico State Auditor's Office aims to hold elected officials and local and state government agencies accountable for how they use taxpayer dollars. Joining us now to share more about the work of the office is Joseph Maestas, State Auditor for New Mexico. Auditor Maestas, thanks for being with us.
You bet, Anthony. Thanks for having me on. It's been a while since I last visited your studio. I think we did an in-studio interview, so I appreciate your concern and your desire to find out more about what my office does and some of the more current cases that we have going on, particularly with respect to southern New Mexico.
Well, we certainly appreciate the time. I'd like to begin with a topic we discussed in depth the last time you were on the program, and that is your concern for what you say are risky accounting practices in local governments and agencies around the state. Can you share with us if you feel the same way, and are there still things that are concerning to you?
Well, I'm always concerned. You can see my hair is a lot grayer since the last time we saw each other. But on a more serious note, yes, we have poor decisions being made all across the state in all categories of public entities. Some of the symptoms of those poor decisions, we have over 300 active cases of fraud, waste, and abuse in our office. We have a number of special audits that are ongoing regarding higher education, school districts, county governments. And here's the thing that's complicating it is that the public accounting industry is contracting. So there's fewer and fewer accounting firms that fan out across the state and contract with public entities to conduct their annual financial compliance audits. We're talking about 650 public entities that have enough revenues to warrant a full financial compliance audit every year. And then the remainder, about another 700, are small entities that have revenues under $500,000, and they're subject to a lesser degree of financial compliance. And so we have quite an oversight responsibility with limited resources. And then given the nature of changes in administration, especially at the local government, you have new visions, new tones at the top. You have sometimes even a turnover in financial staff, which really creates a lot of instability in terms of the administrative aspect of local governments as it impacts financial management and audit compliance. So it's kind of, in a way, the nature of the beast. It's complicated by the contraction of the industry and the fact that a lot of these local governments and finance staff that come in have next to no experience. And so it's critical that these local governments train up these staff members and understand all the compliance that's entailed in the financial aspect of local government administration.
So what are some things you think your office can do or already has available for those local government and entities to help get trained up so that they are aware of some best practices out there that they can follow up on?
That's a good question, Anthony. Actually, we're planning a series of town halls throughout New Mexico to do just that, to analyze like typical findings that we see during the course of reviewing audit reports. For example, let's say higher education institutions. We have a number of common findings that we find in that category of that public entity. And school districts, counties, cities. And so what we're doing is we're telling them, this is what we're finding, and this is what you can do to rectify these findings. We can't be too explicit with certain governments because that would constitute a conflict of my office. It's considered management participation. So we can't participate in the management of the very entities that we're responsible to audit. And so our ability to assist public entities in finding out about the audit rule, the audit act, how to stay compliant, it's very limited. We can't provide, for example, direct training to a local government whose staff may need it. But we can provide broader training and awareness about, what they can do, tried and true measures to address common findings that are germane to the different categories of public entities.
You mentioned that there is a shortage of public accounting professionals in the state of New Mexico. Just how big of an issue is this right now?
Oh, it's huge. It's a nationwide problem. The American Institute of CPAs has commissioned a study. It's called the National Pipeline Advisory Group Study, and their findings were stark. Basically, most of the CPAs are baby boomers and they're all retiring. So we're facing kind of a retirement cliff, where many of the CPAs are going to be out of business or no longer, being a CPA. We've also seen a decrease in interest in the accounting fields, a decrease in the number of tests for CPAs. So what we really need to do is we need to transform the curriculum. So there's a role that's beyond my office to really help reestablish a pipeline of talent. One is to transform the curriculum, to stimulate interest on the part of students to pursue accounting, to integrate technology such as AI, blockchain learning, data analytics into that curriculum, because it's already here and it's already in practice. But I think with the advent of these new technologies, and if we integrate them sufficiently in the curriculum in higher ed, I think we can stimulate a lot of interest in there. We also supported a bill to provide additional options for candidates to sit for the CPA test. It passed the legislature this year. And so we're making some inroads, but this is definitely a crisis. And some of the symptomatic problems that are arising from the shortage of accounting firms is that these accounting firms have more and more clients with each successive year. And so when you have a lot of clients, there's a limited time to work with those clients. And so we're intervening in disputes regarding a public entity that asserts that their accounting firm made their audit late. The accounting firm saying they didn't provide the information in a timely manner. So there's a lot going on here, but this is, I think, one of my primary tasks, and that's to do whatever I can as the state's chief financial watchdog to really stimulate and reestablish this pipeline of talent for accountants.
How do you see AI and technology really changing the field in the next decade?
Oh, I think it's going to revolutionize the field. In fact, there's federal legislation pending that would incorporate accounting into the science, technology, engineering, and math umbrella. And so with the formal incorporation of accounting into STEM, this could pave the way for more higher education grants to partially subsidize accounting journeys for students. We're pursuing here in New Mexico our own state STEM incorporation of accounting. And so this is a national effort. And I think that we ought to follow suit and not wait for the feds to take action. We all know Congress is broken. And so I think we at the state level need to be much more assertive in addressing this problem and working on incorporating accounting into the STEM umbrella.
Is there any sort of resources that your office is going to need to be able to take on the impact AI and technology is going to have on the field?
Well, that's another problem because, as I mentioned, there's fewer and fewer accounting firms, and we already have public entities that cannot find an accounting firm to continue. There's an 8-year limitation on contracting with an accounting firm approved by my office. After that 8 years, they have to take a 2 year kind of a rest period before they can come back and bid to audit that public entity. And so we have a lot of entities saying, can you waive the 8 year auditor rotation rule? And so we're seeing more and more of these requests to waive that limitation on how long you can hire an accounting firm. The other thing is, if an entity cannot find an auditor, by law, my office has to provide those services. And right now, we do not have the bandwidth to do that. And even if we did, we'd have to tell that entity, sorry, you're gonna have to get to the back of the line. There's no telling when we can get to it. So I think this creates vulnerability and more threats of fraud, waste, and abuse if the technical capacity is not there to audit these entities that, are oftentimes rural public entities that are very remote, and it's hard to get interest on the part of the industry to go out there and audit them on an ongoing basis.
Has the legislature responded to your requests?
They have not, and I feel, I'm an engineer by background. I just achieved my certification as a fraud examiner. I have done my level best to educate them on the state of the industry and how these problems have affected us here in New Mexico, and how this is presenting an existential threat on accountability and transparency of public finance in the state of New Mexico. And in this last session, they basically gave me a flat budget. I had requested about a 15% increase, and I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what part of the information that I'm imparting that they're not understanding. And I'm speaking about the state appropriators. So I'm just going to have to keep going at it and give them some real world examples of how my office needs more resources in the face of a contracting public accounting industry in the state.
Well, let's talk about some of those examples. Your office has been in the news over the last year or so with investigations into public entities. I want to begin with news on your office announcing it is investigating Doña Ana County and the county sheriff's office. Can you share with us why your office is looking into what's going on there? It appears that from what's been reported, your office says there are some allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse. Of course, it's no secret there are some strained relationships between the sheriff's office and the county as well. Can you share with us why you're looking into these entities?
Well, in the case of Doña Ana County, sometimes I serve in the capacity as kind of a mediator. And in this case, you had the county commission and the sheriff's office, kind of at odds, kind of trading allegations. We had also complaints coming in regarding the sheriff's office. And really to kind of summarize the situation is you kind of had two parties that couldn't come together and agree on a course of action to address a lot of these issues. Interdepartment dysfunction, possible non-compliance of policies and procedures by the sheriff's office, on and on. And, to the credit of both the sheriff's office and the county commission, they both sent me formal letters requesting assistance. But the commission wanted to do it on their own, and we felt that given the level of acrimony and the scope of the allegations, I felt it was incumbent upon me to step in and designate Doña Ana County for a special audit. And just to give you an update, we did bring all the parties together. We have established a scope for the special audit that's mutually agreeable by both the sheriff's office and the county administration. And so we're very close to finalizing that scope. A contract has not been signed yet, but we're making progress. There's no more nasty grams being traded between the sheriff's office and the county administration. So we're very happy with the progress that we've made by serving as not just the intervener, but the overseer of the special audit.
Do you have any idea about just how long an audit like this may take?
Well, they can take up to a year, but depending on the circumstances, if there's a pressing need to determine the outcome and findings, we will kind of accelerate the timeline and completion of the audit. Um, we don't know yet what it's going to depend on the time frame and the scope. If it's a complex and broad scope, it could take longer. All I can tell you is it'll be less than a year. But
Okay.
in the case of Doña Ana County, we haven't determined that.
All right, I want to ask you about another investigation that your office has taken part in, and that is an investigation into CRUA, the water utility that serves Sunland Park and Santa Teresa. There was allegations about how public funds were being used by that utility. Your office investigated and said there was not any waste, fraud, and abuse that you found during a certain time period. Can you share with us a little bit about that investigation and the findings?
Sure. The investigation into CRUA, the genesis of it was in the form of a letter from the Environment Department Secretary. The Secretary made allegations of misappropriation of the funds that were appropriated to build the arsenic treatment system. And that was the limit. Now there were other issues that were going on, other allegations regarding some of the operational aspects, allegations that the CRUA staff were bypassing the arsenic treatment system. That's really not in our wheelhouse. So what we did is we did an investigation into how the funds, the appropriated funds, were spent to construct the arsenic treatment system for CRUA. And we basically found that it was spent above board. Um, when you initiate an infrastructure project, it's done in phases, and there are payments that are made. And throughout the progress of constructing the arsenic treatment system and the installation, the Environment Department had signed off on each and every phase. And so we basically concluded that there was no fraud, waste, and abuse with respect to the capital outlay appropriation for the arsenic treatment system at CRUA.
Your office said after the investigation findings were announced that it was a limited scope. So can you kind of give us an understanding of why it was a limited scope that your office investigated? And is there anything that you, I guess, to widen that scope, what really needs to take place?
Well, I mean, that was what we were asked to do. That was the allegation, and it concerned only the capital expenditures that were made to build the arsenic treatment system.
I want to move on and talk about another issue that gained a lot of headlines in our part of New Mexico and really across the state. And that was the spending that was going on in recent years at Western New Mexico University. Your office released a findings of an investigation in November that stated your office uncovered I'd say over $360,000 in what you call improper spending. Of course, in the months to come after that finding, WNMU parted ways with its former president, and also the board stepped down as well. Can you share with us a little bit about that investigation and what you found concerning?
Yeah, the investigation was very thorough, very methodical. We had a robust amount of complaints coming in, anonymous complaints, and that's what part of what my office does is we handle anonymous complaints of fraud, waste, and abuse. And some of the allegations were quite significant. And so we did initiate an investigation specifically into travel transactions and procurement transactions. And what we found was an incredible amount, total amount of public funds that were misspent. In general, what we found was really almost a complete lack of adherence to the policies and procedures that governed procurement transactions, travel transactions, and travel approvals. And we really felt so so concerned that we sent a letter of concern to the university. And then of course, others, got involved. The governor intervened and asked the regents to step down. There was a large payout made to the president. And so I think it's gratifying for the hard work that my fraud examiners do to see this kind of institutional change, because what we also concluded was the Board of Regents had completely abdicated their fiduciary responsibility to oversee the expenditure of these public resources, particularly by the president. So this was huge and sweeping. We actually, in hindsight, I had no idea that it would lead to all this change, but I think it's positive change. There's a new Board of Regents with a new attitude and an appropriate tone at the top, a tone of accountability and transparency when it comes to spending university funds.
Your office is also investigating that payout that was made to former WNMU President Joseph Shepard. Can you share with us a little bit about that investigation? And if you can provide an update, we certainly would be interested in hearing that.
Well, all I can tell you is that we are investigating it. I believe the Attorney General is also investigating. He's actively litigating it. I don't know what the status of the case was, but I understand that the payment was made. So this was another, I think, just alarming development subsequent to our investigation and the findings of our investigation into the travel and procurement practices at the university. And so all I can tell you is it's still underway. I also can tell you that when I sent my letter of concern, I sent it to the State Ethics Commission, and the State Ethics Commission informed my office that they too were going to launch an investigation into those practices at Western New Mexico. And as you know, their realm of influence is very specific to, Anti-Donation, Governmental Conduct Act, and other laws that they have to enforce. And so this is another, I think, development in addition to the AG's intervention regarding Western New Mexico. In terms of the special audit, it's near completion. We had an intended completion date of July 1st. However, Western was hit with a cyber attack, which interfered with the availability of some key records that were needed for the special audit. And so we expect that audit to be done sometime in the middle to late summer. So we're near the end of that special audit into Western New Mexico University.
Okay, thank you for giving us that update. I want to talk about just how folks can connect with your office if they do have a complaint or some concern about how public funds are being used in New Mexico. What are some ways that they can connect with your office to share this information?
Sure. Yeah, we handle anonymous intake of fraud, waste, and abuse complaints, but again, there's certain information that we need to have. We need to know, who's involved, how much money's involved, what the source of the funds are. So there's definitely some initial intake information that we need to make a decision to open a case, a fact-finding case. And the primary way, anyone that has any information out there, potential or apparent fraud, waste, and abuse, they have an obligation by state statute. It's 12-6-6 to inform my office. And so what people can do is they can go to the website. There's a red button up in the upper right corner of our landing page, and they can click on that. It says want to report fraud, and it opens up the intake page, and they can provide the necessary information that we need to evaluate and then make that determination whether we're going to open a fact-finding case.
What about those folks who may be concerned about retaliation? What sort of protections are out there for them?
Well, I think protecting their identities, I think that is the main thing, because, it's got to be very, very tough for anyone to step forward and complain, even knowing that their identity is going to be protected. They fear retaliation. They fear they could be fired. And so I admire those folks that have come forward to lodge complaints. And typically it's employees from within that have a credible perspective of what may be going on. But no, we have an obligation to protect their identity. And the unfortunate thing about what we do is if we have a credible fraud, waste, and abuse complaint and we have it's ripe for what we call a referral, and referrals can be made depending on the nature of the case. Typically, a referral will be made to the district attorney, to the prosecuting authority in that area. If it requires additional law enforcement, we could refer to state police or county or city police. We make referrals to the State Ethics Commission. And so we cooperate with all these agencies at the end of a fraud, waste, and abuse case. The thing about it is prosecuting white-collar crime is not a priority. And it kind of pains me that more resources are not allotted to the DA's offices to prosecute white-collar crime, because this sends a chill, throughout at least, public government, that, wow, even if you do come forward, it may not be prosecuted if it warrants prosecution.
All right, unfortunately, we're out of time. State Auditor Maestas, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Newsmakers.
Thank you, Anthony, and I'd love to come on again sometime in the future.
We'll look forward to it. And we want to thank you for joining us for this week's episode. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.